The Canon R8 is the perfect everyday camera for anyone. It has the same technology as a pro camera, but it comes in a smaller body that makes it more affordable. So I tested the camera out for both photo and video quality, along with other features like autofocus, stabilization, and so much more. So what makes the Canon R8 such a good camera? For starters, it has a 24 megapixel full frame sensor and processor from the extremely popular Canon R6 Mark II, and the R6 is an absolute beast. Plus, the full frame sensor gives you a wider field of view that simply looks more cinematic, and the 24 megapixel sensor is more than enough resolution for both photos and videos. And the 24 megapixel sensor is also amazing in low light when using full stops of ISO at 800, 1600, 3200, and this camera is perfectly clean as high as 12,008 ISO. That's really impressive, and that's as good as the Sony FX3, which is a $5,000 camera. Also, I'm gonna leave links down below for the best pricing on the Canon R8. By having a camera that's good in low light and at high ISOs, you're going to be able to shoot with this camera in multiple different kinds of environments, especially when the light is a little wonky. Plus, the Canon R8 also has the same pro features from the Canon R6 Mark II because it has the same processor. So you get the same AI-based autofocus, high frame rate modes, and also super sampling for video. But the smaller body of the Canon R8 does dramatically change how you use this camera, and I only think this has a few minor drawbacks, but depending on how you're planning on shooting with this camera, it might actually be a big deal for you. So let's check it out. The R8 has a really small and compact body that has a really nice grip. It has a really good feeling in your hands, and because it's a smaller body, it's perfect for just walking around and taking with you anywhere. Also, for someone who has a lot of camera bodies, a lot of times I'm looking for a smaller camera that I can just leave on my desk, pick up, and go shoot whenever I feel like it. But a lot of the times, because the pro bodies are a lot bigger, I'm like, do I really want to take this thing out right now? I get lazy sometimes. Now, some of you guys might find that the Canon R8 has a little bit too short of a side handle, and you can actually make this handle taller by getting a grip extender. The one that Canon makes is about $80, total ripoff. I recommend using a third party instead. Now, smaller cameras like the Canon R8 often have overheating issues, but the R8 itself does not have any overheating issues at all. You do have a video limit that I'll talk about later, but when it comes to the button layout and design of the R8, it's a very minimal button layout, but it's 100% customizable, so you can actually set this camera up to have way more functionality, and you can really get it dialed in the way you like. On the body itself, you have a command wheel for shutter, a command dial for aperture, and if you do want, you can actually map the ISO directly to the control ring on your lens and use and control ISO that way. And it has the same Canon menus that are really easy to navigate. They're super minimal and really easy to figure out. And it also has a side articulating screen on the back. Now, it's not the highest quality screen in the world, but it is a touch screen. This allows you to use touch autofocus, where you can simply tap something on the back of the screen and it will snap into focus, and the focus itself is really, really good. And on top of that, you can also use the back screen to navigate all of your menus, change all of your settings. It even has a quick menu for all of your major settings. You can really use this like a smartphone if you're so accustomed to it. One thing to note is that there's no joystick on the back of this camera for controlling your autofocus points, but when you have this camera up to your eye, you can actually tap on the LCD screen in the back with your other hand and actually change autofocus points or subject detect that way, and it kind of makes up for the lack of the joystick. Now, the one downside of having a smaller body is that you do have a smaller battery. Do not let people tell you this battery is too small. I was able to record 2 4K clips at 30 frames per second twice on a single battery, and walking around just like casually shooting on and off, this battery's gonna last you all day. Although if you want spare batteries, you can get a 2-pack on Amazon for about $40 with the charger. Worst case scenario, you can also power the Canon R8 through USB-C. It won't charge the battery, but you can power on the camera if you're shooting in a studio environment. Now, when shooting photos with the Canon R8, it's going to give you the exact same amazing quality as the Canon R6 because it has the same sensor and the same processor. And you can also shoot in 14-bit RAW, which is going to let you edit the heck out of your photos, really make professional level work with just a simple camera like this. However, there is one major thing about the Canon R8 that's going to affect photographers. It does have a physical shutter, but the first part of that shutter is electronic, and the second curtain with the second part of the shutter is mechanical. Now, this won't affect a lot of people, but it means that this camera can only shoot in 6 frames per second, which is not good for action, but it's perfectly fine for portraits, landscapes, something where it's more chill and there's not a lot of movement. And in this mode, you can actually shoot up to 1,000 raw photos or 1000 JPEGs, which is really good, especially if you don't need to get super quick action. And on top of that, if you do want to shoot action, you can also shoot electronic shutter mode up to 40 frames per second, which is as fast as video, actually a little bit faster. And it can actually shoot 56 raw photos or 125 JPEGs in electronic shutter mode. And it also has the same autofocusing system from the more expensive Canon R6 Mark II. It's an AI-based subject detect autofocus, which means it already has a bunch of data about different kinds of subjects like people, animals, cars, and it already is guessing at where the subject's going, and it does a really good job with just locking onto a subject, detecting what it already is. And even though like I was moving around with my camera a lot, the model had sunglasses, it kind of just knew what it was looking at, and it was able to figure out where it needed to move focus almost preemptively. And the autofocus works just as well in photos as it does in video. When it comes to video, this camera can shoot 4K at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second, and the 4K is downsampled from the full sensor 24 megapixel 6K image area, which means you're going to get the clarity and resolution and detail of 6K, but in 4K video, which is also a smaller, more manageable file size. And you can record up to 2 hours in 4K at 24 and 30 without any overheating issues. But when it comes to 4K at 60 frames per second, you can only record about 30 minutes before this camera needs a break. In my testing, I only got about 25 to 26 minutes, so it's not a hard number. In my opinion, the video limits don't really matter for a camera like this. The overall power and resolution that you get in video mode is unheard of for a camera like this. And the R8 also has one of the most important features for videographers, which is slow motion. This camera can do 4K at 60, but also full HD up to 120 and 180 frames per second. But the best thing that Canon did with the R8 is actually putting C-Log 3 in here, just like the Canon R6 Mark II. This is a feature that usually Canon leaves out of their cheaper cameras, but with C-Log 3, you're going to get more flexibility with your colors, more dynamic range. You are going to have to convert your footage. If you're a casual shooter, you should not shoot in this, but if you're someone that's serious about their videography, this is a really important feature to have in this camera. Now, one thing that is missing from the Canon R8 that's important to video shooters is the lack of IBIS. This camera only has digital stabilization. In standard mode, stabilization is pretty smooth, but if you really want the best quality, you want to use enhanced stabilization. This is going to put a slight crop on your image, but the stabilization is going to be a whole lot better. Now, smooth handheld footage is something both casual shooters and pros will care about. So is the Canon R8 worth it as a photo and video camera? And is it good enough for everyday use? And what about as a budget pro camera? Now, if you're someone that's just shooting everyday life and you're just taking photography for fun, you're going to get a great camera. You're going to get pro level quality in every single way. Plus you get a nice compact body that's a lot easy to travel with if you're shooting out and about every day. And this is a camera you can pretty much always keep on you with the small size. And the 24 megapixels is more than enough resolution for any kind of editing. You're going to get a super solid image out of this camera. And when you compare the Canon R8 to most everyday carry cameras, it's really rare to see a full frame 24 megapixel sensor. Usually the sensors are smaller or the resolution isn't very high. And regardless of whatever you're shooting, 40 frames per second electronic shutter mode is going to be more than fast enough. Plus with 14-bit RAW, you can really edit the heck out of your photos. To get such a powerhouse of a camera in such a small body is really impressive, and if you're someone who's maybe a professional photographer, this is a great everyday carry. Now, if you're a video shooter, the fact that you have 4K downsampled at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second from 6K is a big win. You never see this in such an inexpensive camera like this. Plus, you also get C-Log 3. This is a great budget video camera, whether you're a pro, whether you're a casual, whether you're someone that's just starting out in video. This is one of the best budget video cameras out there right now. Although I do realize budget is subjective when talking about pro cameras. The specs in the R8 are probably overkill for most casual everyday cameras like this, but it's nice to know you have such a powerhouse of a camera in such a small body that you can always have on you. And in my experience, the small battery was not an issue. I was easily able to shoot on this camera all day without having to recharge. Overall, you get so much horsepower in the Canon R8. You're basically getting an R6 Mark II in terms of specs, but for $1,000 less. This camera overall is an amazing deal, whether you need an everyday carry camera, whether you're a professional, and if you want to make sure you get the best pricing on your Canon R8, I'll leave links down below. See you guys in the next video. Peace.